There are thousands of videos and essays talking about the influence and success of 1998's Zelda Ocarina of Time. Yet there is one aspect of this groundbreaking title that few have ever discussed. Writing about this seminal masterpiece seems a fool's errand. It's like talking about the Beatles or Mozart. What more can possibly be said about something so influential and timeless? How much more can you analyze the perfect game? Well, the water temple sucked, but we'll give that a pass. I'm not here just to talk about Ocarina of Time, but instead I want to talk about the state of gaming prior to its release and the drastic amplification of the medium after it came out. I would wager it is no exaggeration to say that there is no single game that has had more of an impact on not just the medium of gaming, but the way our collective culture thinks about gaming as a whole. To properly understand the phenomenal impact this game had, we need to go back to a time before modern gaming, before games looked hyper-realistic, and before the medium was a worldwide juggernaut that generated more revenue than movies and books combined. The roots of gaming were humble, to say the least. Early games were experiments created solely to satisfy the curious minds of technological men of the era. Tennis for Two, widely considered the first video game, came out a full 20 years before the Atari 2600. And while arcade gaming and limited gaming on other consoles were a thing prior to this, it was the Atari 2600 that represented the first cultural shift towards the medium. While other systems existed prior to the Atari, their success was highly limited. The Fairchild Channel F or Magnavox Odyssey weren't exactly consumer friendly, and the quality of their content was frighteningly inconsistent. The general public wasn't about to shell out $100 and $1972 for this shit. So games occupied a niche enjoyed by the few. Trust me folks, this will get back to Ocarina of Time, just hold on.
When are they gonna get to the fireworks factory?
So the Atari, with its approachability, ease of use, and quality of content, suddenly made video games appealing to a much larger pool. You didn't need to be a computer whiz to enjoy Pitfall or Space Invaders. You just pick it up and have fun. Unless, of course, you're on that last Space Invader and god damn it, it's so fast I can't hit it! So imagine we have two circles. The first contains a small number of nerds who have read the Silmarillion multiple times and are fine playing a text-based role-playing game with a learning curve steeper than the walls of Helm's Deep. We'll call these people the enthusiasts, and they were around playing games even when they were highly difficult to understand and enjoy. Outside of this circle, we have what we will call the onlookers, people who have maybe a passing interest in the medium, but they lack the technical aptitude to learn difficult systems, and they can't follow graphics that are simple or abstract. The Atari opened the door to this group with its approachable controls, superior graphics, and streamlined method of getting new games. But outside of both of these circles is the general public. This is a group that doesn't care about video games and would only approach the medium if there was something very easy to pick up that looks graphically impressive. Do you get it now? Do you get where I'm going with this? If we ignore the video game crash of 1983, there were plenty of amazing and approachable games that came out in the 20 years between the release of the Atari 2600 and Ocarina of Time. And saying that they were not appealing to the general public is painting with a broad brush. You can look at something like Donkey Kong Country to see the most exquisite sprite work ever, or look at Crash Bandicoot as a massive leap forward for 3D graphics at that time. There were hundreds of games of impeccable quality in these 2 decades. But in general, the public would look at these games and write them off as simply little toys for kids. Look, gaming, even prior to the modern era, has long had some of the most robust and mature stories ever told. The dark defeatism seen in Final Fantasy VI, the intense musings on the nature of time in Chrono Trigger, not to mention the scores of CRPGs like Ultima and Wasteland that dealt with very heavy themes. The problem is, for the general public, there was a big disconnect between how these games looked and what their themes entailed. You or I can look at any number of RPGs and see the absolute absolute beauty on display while recognizing the sheer genius level artistry that goes into making this. But for the non-video game loving public, they just see a bunch of pixels. And prior to the release of the N64, most of the public wrote off something that looked pixelated as simply a stupid little pastime without much worth. On top of that, the more difficult controls of games on the SNES or Sega made those who didn't already have a passion for games more hesitant to try them. For this third largest circle of people to enter into gaming, a game would have to come along that would tell a mature, thoughtful story while presenting a visually enticing world that is easy enough for anyone to pick up and play. And while there were a few games that had some of these elements, it wasn't until Ocarina of Time released at the tail end of 1998 that we saw all of these aspects put into a single experience flawlessly. Again, except for the Water Temple, where most games opened with a cartoonish splash screen or goofy visuals, Ocarina of Time presented us with a wide open field, draped before the setting moon behind a lone rider as a beautiful, enchanting melody echoed out of the speakers of your CRT TV. Link, sitting atop Epona, is not a representation of a rider as we saw in collections of pixels, but he is immaculately constructed in state-of-the-art polygons. This was a title screen so unlike those of most games, and it could turn the head of even the most stringent non-believer in the artistic merit of video games. And when the game began, it did not start with a wild action set piece, but rather a slow, thoughtful, detailed backstory into a world so unlike our own. A maiden flees in pouring rain, pursued by a black rider, and the cries of a dying elder urge a loyal follower to save the world. This was not some children's fantasy with comic-like violence or simplistic narrative. This was an intricate, sweeping story worthy of attention. And then Navi flies away from the Great Deku Tree, and we behold in full real-time 3D this gorgeous forest setting unlike anything ever rendered before. God damn, this is amazing. Someone should make a video about how this section of Ocarina of Time is perfect. And if you like that video or this one, you should like and subscribe. I'm just saying. So you got a game that is graphically impressive to people who don't care about games. It has a story that is robust and mature, but how do you control it? You want me to use this thing? Look at all those buttons. What's a C right button? And where is Z? So there's A, B, 4 C's, L, R, and Z buttons? What about the rest of the alphabet? How am I supposed to figure out how I can control? Oh, you just use the giant stick. Nintendo knew what they were doing when they put a big stick at the center of their controller. For most people, especially non-gamers, navigating a fully 3D environment was a scary prospect. But by making games like Zelda, Mario 64, and Mario Kart easy enough to control with a few key buttons and the stick, even your grandma could figure this shit out. Ocarina of Time, move with the stick, hit stuff with the green button. Mario 64, move with the stick, jump with the blue button. Mario Kart, hold down the blue button and move with the stick. GoldenEye, use the stick and press the trigger-like button to shoot. Use the stick, press the button, use the stick. Sure, there's a lot more to each of these games, but for that third circle of the mouth-breathing public who doesn't understand gaming, they could easily get into the experience without a lot of heartache. Moms and dads may have joined you on your quest with Link, friends or relatives may have taken a curiosity to the game, and people you never thought would like gaming may have given Ocarina of Time more attention than other games. By the way, I would love to hear about these stories in the comments. Regardless of your personal experience with Ocarina of Time, this was the game that suddenly made the medium far more serious in the eyes of those who once viewed it as a novelty for children. With the N64 and PS1, mature and thoughtful stories, which had long been a hallmark of games, could now be presented in a way that was palatable to the casual viewer, and with control schemes that were more approachable than ever, an influx of that third circle came into gaming. For them, there was no better entry point to the medium than this thoughtful, robust adventure. Those that thought the medium was for children could play Ocarina of Time and get hit with quotes like, "Time passes, people move. Like a river's flow, it never ends. A childish mind will turn to noble ambition. Young love will become deep affection." People who played this game were serenaded by music that didn't sound like bleeps and bloops, but was orchestral and sweeping. The game presented a wide open world that freed them from constraints and allowed for true exploration and experimentation. Okay, sorry, I'm rambling. You can learn about all these aspects of the game in other videos, and I'll link some of my favorites in the description. My point is, the entire package of Ocarina of Time represented a watershed moment for gaming in the eyes of the public, and it's no stretch of the imagination to say that this was the game which changed the perception of the medium forevermore. Video games were no longer child's play to those who were unfamiliar with them, and in this era we would see the first thoughtful and deep games with wide appeal to the general public. Chrono Cross, Final Fantasy VII, 8, and 9, Majora's Mask, and so much more showed the world that games were not just little playthings, but instead they were experiences to be enjoyed and savored by all. It's weird talking about this in modern times. These days it's quite rare for games to not be universally accepted as artistic and amusing endeavors, unless of course you talk to the parents on TikTok, but that's a different story. Games like Red Dead Redemption 2, Clair Obscur Expedition 33, and Portal carry on the legacy of having wide appeal through their stunning graphics, exceptionally deep stories, and approachable gameplay. Yet it was not always this way, and while the slow march of time has opened up gaming to wider and wider audiences, there was no bigger moment for this expansion of interest in the medium than the release of Ocarina of Time. Well, the release of the Wii is an exception to that, but maybe we'll talk about that in another video. So while many have discussed the perfection that is Ocarina of Time, it's worth remembering that the world of 1998 and the perceptions of gaming at the time were wholly different from what we know today. What memories do you have of that time and of playing Ocarina of Time? I would love to see your thoughts and memories about this game in the comments, and a like and subscribe go a very long way. I'll have a new video in about a month, but until then, I hope you guys have a good one. Thanks guys, bye.